Okay, so here we are. This is going to be a video about how to change a trigger on a PT111 G2. I've been working on my custom trigger. I would like to start off, first of all, saying take this to a professional. I've worked with this gun a lot. I've made my mistakes and learned from them and whatnot. I've tried to explain all the possible pitfalls you could run into in the video about the tips and tricks about disassembling a PT111 G2. But this is a firearm. It's a gun. If you put it back together wrong, there's a chance something could go wrong. So, you know, take it to a professional, have it done professionally. This is definitely my recommendation, very strongly. That being said, some of you might be interested in just seeing how it's done and not doing it yourselves, and some of you might be interested in saying, I want to take my shot at it anyway and go, which I did. So do as I say, not as I do. Take it to a professional is definitely my advice. That being said, here's how we proceed. So I have some tools here that some of them may seem a little odd. Electrical tape, or just tape of any kind, perfect for setting the gun on and driving out pins. There's 3 pins in the case and 2 more to take out the trigger. I find the hard drive magnet, the large magnet, especially handy for just throwing the whole rear sear on and not worrying about anything falling apart. It's not required. Small screwdriver, couple dental picks, pair of vice grips or other pliers, and of course a hammer. Drive things out. So before we get started, actually, let me see this guy here. So I'm on production test 2 of my trigger, and this one I got in what the 3D printing company calls stainless steel. It's not actually stainless. It's well, it's not fully stainless. It's an alloy of stainless and bronze. I want to say, I believe bronze. I actually don't like this as much as the nylon one. I thought that stainless would really be the good way to go. It's got a little bit rougher of a texture. Things aren't as well finished in the edges. This guy, actually, there's a little bit of crud in there. I haven't cleaned this at all yet, so I got it. So there's a little bit of crud in there. I don't. So anyway, all told, I like the nylon one better, honestly, and the stainless one, and you can actually kind of see some of the shininess there of the brass. The shiny, I keep saying brass, it's bronze. I believe is what they said. So the, I don't really like the metal one as much. A little bit more junk in here. It's not a whole lot of stuff that I've got to clean out, but you can see, it's not as well finished. It's a lot heavier, obviously. It's a piece of metal. I was amazed at how light the nylon one was, this guy, compared to anything, really. This thing feels like air and fluff, but it is so strong. Before I start doing anything here, let me show this is empty. This is production test 1 of the nylon. I scratched it on purpose just to see if I could. If you notice, it's a little unpolished, but pretty close to the finish of the gun, like it would be if you polished it a little bit. So if you're holding this, I can literally, I've got pretty strong fingers. That nylon is tough. It is. It's tough stuff. If you pick one up and feel it, it feels like it's made out of air and dreams. But it's tough. So anyway, I really think that I'm going to try this stainless one because I want to see how they fit and everything. You can even see just the way it's polished is just not, it's fine. I think it'll be really nice, but I just like the nylon one better, honestly, and it's significantly cheaper, about half the price. So anyway, the gun is clear. This is about changing the trigger. We're almost 5 minutes into this video and haven't got to that yet. I already took the 3 pins out. You simply, like I said, set it on the tape. You get your driving pin, whatever that may be. I used drill bits because I had a couple old dead broken tip drill bits that worked perfectly. Drive them out this way. The next step is removing the takedown spring See if I can actually get my camera to focus. So this is pretty straightforward, and a lot of the stuff I covered in my other video too, about the tips and tricks and disassembly of the PT111 G2. So this guy, what you want to do is press this down and slide this guy out of place. There's only one direction it really easily goes, and I always forget which way that is. So you kind of push down on this guy a little bit, you slide this guy back and forth. I believe it's this direction, but there we go. So hold your finger over this so the spring and plug don't escape. Pull this guy out. You may have to push down a little bit on the spring there. You do want to make sure that that spring and that plug do not escape. They're not super sprung, but they can go flying across the room on you, and you don't want that. That after the side. So now we have the rear sear and the front trigger assembly and the bar between the trigger bar. If you've never taken if your gun has never been taken apart before, likely will have to do something like get a larger screwdriver, put it inside, and tap up on these assemblies. The trigger assembly can be tapped right there from underneath. This can be kind of tapped right there from underneath. Mine has been loosened up a little bit from the numerous times that I've disassembled and reassembled this. So as you can see, I can just start pulling mine apart. The rear sear, I think I can just kind of wedge up just a little bit. So you want to be careful as you're taking this out. The safety has a little baldy spring in there. You kind of see the ball. This guy is not as important, but to keep everything together, this is where the magnet comes in. You can see here, I just twist this guy around back and forth a little bit till it comes free of that whole assembly. Make sure you do not lose that little ball right there, because that thing can roll across the floor and really get you. So to make sure I don't lose anything, I just set it all in a big magnet and then set it off to the side. It's the only reason that I have the magnet. Trigger assembly comes out. We're down to the trigger assembly. As I've said before, you need to be very, very cautious while this is in this state or further apart, not to tweak this. You can pull it a little bit. There you go. Camera didn't want to focus there. So you can pull this a little bit to maneuver around and whatnot, but if you squeeze this together more than the gun is normally squeezed, you can overspring your trigger return spring. And right now, since it's an early prototype, I don't have the stock one in because I just flung something in just to put it together easily and test the other functions. My stock one should be going back in this time though. So at this point, I'm going to drive out the pin. Mine is actually a little bit loose there. Not that it matters on that guy, but so you'll pull this out. Your slide release lever is right here. It is held in by the same pin, as you can see, so it can flop around some. Set that off to the side for right now. So now we're down to the spring, the trigger bar, and the trigger itself. This is a little awkward to drive out because it's hard to hold this over something. I like actually just setting this on the tape and driving it. Starting to drive the pin right out through the tape. This is where you get a small pair of pliers or whatnot. Pull the pin completely out. At this point, set that carefully off to the side so you won't lose it. Your side spring. So this is production prototype 1 and production prototype 2. Like I said, I kind of like the nylon. And the metal one is a little smaller. I kind of felt like the first production type was a little oversized here. Let's see if we can give you an idea of what's going on. This is in grams. 20.8 grams. Actually, let's go for ounces. So 0.73 ounces, so almost 3/4 of an ounce. The nylon version, as you can see, the nylon version is very light, and you can look at the holes and anything I have going on in here. Everything looks great. Everything worked perfectly, even when I was tweaking on that trigger harder than anyone should ever do. So let me see here. Another thing I could do while I have this out, let me pull this guy out real quick. And here is the stock trigger assembly. So the stock trigger assembly is a little heavier than the nylon. Also, I would like to point out, guys, this is a flat face trigger. The ones that I'm making, these do not have the same safety mechanism. I do not like the Taurus safe action trigger. The Glock one is okay. The Taurus one kind of hooks behind. I don't like it. So these are flat face triggers. Be aware of that. I wouldn't say that it's an unsafe thing to do. There are several safeties inherent in this gun, but this is removing one of them. So before you even consider this, be conscious of that. You know what's happening. So anyway, there is the weights of the various triggers. I really do like the nylon a lot, but we're gonna see how this guy goes here. And here is my stock spring. This is the most difficult part of the whole procedure by far. And I have kind of messed up my stock spring a little bit. Like I said, when the trigger was mounted, I did spring it, and that oversprung the sprung. It wasn't returning positively to where it should be. So at this point, what I want to do is begin putting this guy through. Okay, guys, I might not actually be offering these in brass, this brass stainless steel combination at all. Turns out, and I made it work here, but there's just too much junk in these holes that apparently they didn't clean out. The nylon ones were perfect. This trigger, everything was exact the way I created it. You know, I mean, slid in perfect, everything was great. This guy actually had to clean out this hole significantly, spent a couple of minutes doing that, and there's no real way to get it better finished in little holes like this where you're doing 3D printing, so apparently with metal. So I might actually nix the metal ones. You know, I just didn't realize how much I would like those, the nylon ones, and it just really seems like a better option. Excuse me, something kind of caught my throat there. Okay, so anyway, proceeding onward. So we've got the pin that's going to go right there. And the way this is going to be assembled is the pin is going to go right there. This guy is going to go right there, and the spring is going to go in between. The spring, the straighter leg, has a crook in it, is going to go downward like this. The hook is eventually going to hook right over right there on the trigger bar. There's a little bit of a slot there. If you take yours apart, you'll see it. I don't know how well you can see that on mine. Anyway, so like I said, this is the trickiest part of the whole operation. It's quite a bit of a challenge. I assemble this so that the spiked end that kind of holds this shaft in is on this side, so I slide it in this way. Other side first. And forgive me if I don't perfectly show everything. Like I said, this is really a challenge, even if you're not doing it for a video. It might actually be easier for you guys if you haven't messed up and resprung your spring as I have done, which is why I caution to not overextend that. The goal is to spring this spring down into place here and get the end of the shaft through it. I'm going to try to videotape this, although videotaping does make everything more awkward, which does not help in this situation where everything is already super awkward. Yeah, I think I'm just going to have to pause the video until I get this pin started in here. Okay guys, and getting up to this point is a big, huge part of the reason that I said take this to a professional. This spring is really tough. I mean, the spring itself isn't tough, it's somewhat fragile, but it's rough to get it to this point. So at this point I have the spring sort of into place. I have the pin halfway through the spring, so it's holding the spring in place. And what I'm going to want to do here at this point is to line up this arm, this hole, and then afterward I'm going to want to grab the spring and pull it around the outside of that guy. So start off here. Yeah. And you may need a little assistance getting this guy into place. You can, because there are some splines on that end. So what I'm going to do here is take my trusty little drill bit, tap it into place. Notice it's fairly flush on both sides. So now we need to get our little dental hook, and we have to pull this side of the hook over this bar very gently, because we don't want to overspring things, but it is, so don't pull it more than you need to. Okay, I don't know if you can see that, but I kind of almost got it in place. Usually this thing's better than this. Just a second here. See if this helps. So I've almost got this spring in place. It's kind of hooked over the edge. I want to push it over until it sort of snaps into place there. Realize it might be a little difficult for you to see. The spring is coming around and hooking over the bar like that. So like I said, once more, we want to be very careful not to pull this together and overspring that spring. So at this point, we are ready to start putting things back together. We have this guy right here. Slides in. Oh, I'm sorry, that was upside down. Slides in just like that. Want to get our pin and get it started. Through that lever. Through a little too far there. So basically we want to get it started through the slide release lever and then slide the trigger into place, and the trigger kind of goes around, slides in like that. Once it feels like it's lined up, oh, it felt like it was lined up there. sec here. Okay, guys. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be offering. I don't think I'm going to be offering this in this metal. Same thing here. This hole was all burred up inside, just as part of it. It just turns out the nylon is a much better material for this. So anyway, it's cleaned up now, but that's not something that I can be giving to you guys, as that's just too much effort. So anyway, get the trigger, slide into place. This is kind of several angles all at once that have to line up here. So now, we gently tap this guy. Just a tad too far there with that. Okay, so now we've got our trigger assembly ready to go back in. We get our rear sear assembly that we're going to hold on to very firmly to make sure that ball doesn't pop out. Manipulate the trigger bar around so the two are placed together correctly. Then, once we're here, slide the whole works right into the gun. And there we go. So now from here we have to put back in the takedown release lever. It's not that difficult. Put this guy back in. Push it down a little bit, and we'll slide the lever back in over the top of it. You do want to make sure that the saddle side, let me see if I can get that, is facing towards the back of the guns. The rounded end should be facing forward. Because what's going to happen is this is going to be lining up right there on your barrel and catching it on the saddle side. We'll go all back together in just a second here. Okay, so here we are putting in the takedown spring, and one of my tiny little drill bits, although my tiny little screwdriver works for this as well. Push down the takedown spring. You make sure the saddle is facing the convex portion of it is facing towards the back. The rounded end will go towards the front of the gun. Just slide in while that little spring is down. Snap into place. Just make sure everything's in there nice and snug. At that point, we have our 3 pins that go in. Smallest one, these are pretty obvious in size because they're quite a bit different in diameter from each other. The smallest one goes in the middle, the largest one goes in the front. Sorry, that is not the largest one, that is the medium one. The largest one goes in the front, like so. And the medium one goes in the very back. It's really not a good surface to do this on, but let me see if I can do it. So as I've said before, everything is super awkward with this camera. Normally don't have a problem driving those down straight, but as I'm trying to reach around a camera and not knock it over, it makes it kind of difficult. I guess I didn't really scuff it up. Anyway, it should be easier for you if you don't have a camera sitting in front of you. There's the 3 pins. There's the trigger. Let's see how everything goes together here. So, put the safety on. It's nice and tight. So that is the minimum. And you see that right there. That is the minimum amount of take-up that you can have. There's barely any take-up right there before the safety in order for the safety to work. So all of this, if you want the manual safety to function, there has to be this much free play. Because if the trigger is behind that point, the safety does all sorts of goofy things. It doesn't work right. So I think we're good. I kind of like the little bit longer one, although this isn't bad. It fits my finger pretty well. The curve is not bad. So you can sort of see where the original, if you picture where the original one came, the original one was a little bit further and came way further back, because this one is actually quite a bit forward of the original. So that is the amount of trigger play that we have. That's the free play right there, and the safety. And that's the brake. Oh, I think I was holding it weird in there. Yeah. It's the free play. There's the brake. And I'll try to get some range time on it this weekend and get some videos of it firing, see how it does and everything. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and I hope you found it interesting. Bye.